Hello and welcome back to the 1904 Club, the Hull City podcast from the Hull Daily Mail. And happy 1st of December, everybody. I was the only one that got the memo about the Christmas jumper on December the 1st. The other two have come dressed for a funeral. But anyway, it's the Grinch law. Grinchy.
Yeah, and it's just jogged my memory that you've worn that before.
I have, yeah. Probably last Christmas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What time of year did you last wear it?
Easter.
Yeah.
They are the dulcet tones of David Prutton. Coming in your ears. Morning, Prutts.
Hello. We've got the same colour on, but mine's obviously for a different thing altogether. It's good to be back after another Hull City win. I wonder how many times we're going to be saying that this season, eh?
Well, we've said it quite a few times already.
Yeah.
Probably 8 times so far.
Happy days, eh?
Absolutely. Burnsy, how the devil are you all been?
Yeah, I'm all right. I'm all right. I'm continuing to enjoy the football. I feel that was a huge win on Saturday at Stoke after the loss to Ipswich in the week, and a nice way to come back, and a really big 3 points given where they were at half time in the game, because they looked poor in that first half, and you thought, oh, that's going to be 3 defeats on the bounce. And then they turned it round. Credit to the manager. He's done it again. He's made his changes at half time. That changed the game. Players obviously buy into what he's doing and pulled out a really big 3 points. So well done. Happy days.
Absolutely. We might be joined by Catherine at some point, but she's been busy with Serena Wiegman's press conference for England this morning. So we'll see how she goes. Fran, I think Fletch is still locked in a cupboard somewhere. But that's par for the course. Prutts, in terms of that game on Saturday, then, it was another Hull City tale of two halves, really, but not dissimilar to the Norwich game, where they were pretty abject in the first half. Obviously, at Norwich, they didn't concede. But at Stoke, they did concede. Sorba Thomas, obviously, a Hull City target last January with a thumping volley. And Stoke were by far the better team in the first half. But, you know, it's that old adage in football, it was only 1-0. You know, City were never going to be as bad in the second half as they were in the first. The manager made a couple of changes, tweaked a few things, dropped Crooksy a bit deeper, obviously put on Mo Balumi and Carl Joseph, tweaked things, and Stoke weren't at the level, but City were very good in the second half, weren't they?
Yeah, very much so. And it's a reflection of what Burnsy was saying with regards to what the manager did at half-time. The fact that he made changes showed, as you say, quite happy to be able to move the team around. I think the players that came on made a difference, with the greatest respect to the players that went off. When the boards came up as they were coming out for the second half, and I've been involved in games such as this, I had no idea that Darko JB had been on the pitch, because of you kind of look who's coming off and coming on, and you think, all right, wow, I didn't realise he was playing. That shows the impact collectively of what they were like as a team. I thought the goalie had a couple of very, very smart saves, which potentially kept City in it moving into the second half. There was a brief question mark with the Sorba Thomas goal about where it went in, because it goes in first and foremost, and we all, as a football fan, it's a glorious, glorious thing to see, isn't it? On the volley, powered past the goalkeeper, not quite in the top corner, not a million miles away from Pandor, but it was travelling at some speed, so there's a bit of mitigation there. And to get the goal so early into the second half, it shows about scoring at the correct time. Scoring at a good time in a game. And as much as potentially Sergei was saying a few things, and even Shemi Ajay alluded to after the game that they had a chat about a couple of things at half time. Mark Robbins was as livid with his side in the second half, potentially, as our manager was, so Hull City's manager was in the first half. So a cliched game of two halves, but something needed to happen. Balumi obviously had a hand in the equalising goal, and then
not literally though, it didn't hit his hand.
Well, it didn't. I mean, I was looking. Obviously, look at that, the t-shirt. I know that Don in commentary, I think he was more inclined to lean towards it being a handball, but I think where it hits him on the arm is almost a very definition of what this t-shirt line is. It's on the badge that's there, the championship badge, the EFL badge that's there. Hits him plumb on there. And the more you look at it, it's not it's coming towards him and hits him there. But he correct me if I'm wrong if you think different, chaps. He looks to pass it with his shoulder, doesn't he?
He does.
It doesn't hit him getting out of the way. He flicks his arm towards it. Yeah. So in essence, it's pretty clever. And again, I think Mark alluded to it, thinking that part of it was offside. I couldn't find an offside there. I know it was very, very tight with everyone coming out, but I don't think he was offside. And then scoring at the correct times, Louis, blockbuster of a challenge to on the break, where the Stoke, where it got pulled back. God knows where the rest of his defence had gone. Chemi had his arm up playing offside 20 yards in front of everyone else, which, bless him, you can do that all you want, but when the rest of your team stood behind you, you're not going to get, well, maybe you get it sometimes in the Championship. But so it was a sign of resilience, a show of resilience in the second half, which is very, very positive. But I'm a bit like you, Burnsy, and I think it's not. I don't think it's cynical or being overly down on the team. But I think it's absolutely right to kind of go, and it will be that, after the game, everyone's high fiving. We'll come to what happened at the end and all that togetherness. But from a professional performance point of view, there's a fair bit to address in that first half, which I think for a good second 45 minutes doesn't completely put it to bed. I just think it's a couple of little, if it's not too much of a ask about face statement, nice warning signs to say about not getting too carried away, and that teams such as a Stoke could have been 2 or 3 up and put City to bed by half time, couldn't they?
Yeah. I agree. Just because I was going to mention this, but Tom's Stormtroop Aim to the 1904 Club on Twitter puts this far better than I, and I'm envious because he says classic Jack Hull, which I thought was nice. Well done,
good.
Tom.
I need this stuff on Saturdays, people. Can you direct this stuff to me? Because I do like that silly Gary Lineker impression where you do a pun and sign off. I need this stuff earlier. Come on.
Jack Hull and Hyde performance again. It's good. Because I'd written down just Jekyll and Hyde. I've been saying that for a few weeks, and that's still going on. Tom says, think Lundstram and Crooks together are vital to have control in the midfield until we get Matarzo back. We'll come to Lundstram. I want to talk about his performance. Can we just address? You mentioned the goal from Zorba Thomas. I'm looking at it as they set up, and I'm thinking, why is nobody near Thomas? I don't necessarily want to start on a negative, but I'm going to. And I'm thinking, hold on a minute, he's been their star player this season.
Yeah.
Why on a set piece is there nobody near him? Technically, is there a reason for that, Prutts?
Do you know, part of what I would, and again, this is me second guessing the way that City sets up from a set piece point of view, because the original defensive header and how close City were to him, I didn't have too much of a problem with, because if you are leaving someone on the edge of the box, to get from the 6-yard box to stop him hitting it first time, you've got to be absolutely lightning across the floor, haven't you? And I think there's a certain element of, and whether I don't think this would be said in training, and maybe it's a subconscious thing as footballers, where you almost go, well, if you can hit it from there first time and score, part of me's going,
fair play.
Yeah, fair play to you. So it's almost kind of the worst of all, the best of all the evils that you can kind of leave. Have we got everyone in the middle of the box? Yeah. Have we got both posts covered? Yeah. Have we got the vital men that need to be marked? Yes. What's the least trouble right now? The least trouble with a corner coming in from that side is a man stood off the edge of the 18-yard box on the opposite side. Now, to wholeheartedly agree with what you're saying, Burnsy, but it is Zorba Thomas, who this season has been fantastic, who has got that ability. We've seen it more consistently this year, who scored 2 goals from distance, whether one was a cross during the week, whatever, but I scored 2 goals from distance just a couple of days ago at Stoke. So I can absolutely see that. I'm not saying for one second the manager's turned around and would have shrugged his shoulders at someone smashing it in the back of the net from there, but I think I'd have to have a look at it again. But the way everybody's set up, whether there wasn't a spare man, means that you leave the furthest man away from potential danger for you. So other than the fella taking the corner and maybe a couple of defenders at the back, the fella stuck out on the opposite diagonal 18-yard corner would be the lesser of all the evils that you could kind of cover. That would be my very unprofessional, non-professional way of saying it.
I think the frustration for the manager was that Joel Ndala should have gone out, and there was a corner fairly soon after where Ndala did go out and get it away. I think the manager,
to where Sorba is.
Yeah, so where Sorba was.
Well, in that case, Ndala's got to go on the header. Yeah. He's got to track the trajectory of the ball, and when it's met by, was it Shemi that it hit? Did he head it out?
Yeah, Shemi headed it out. Yeah,
so he headed it out, not miles, but far enough away from your goal to get up and out the way of Pandor. Yeah, so there you go. He's got to go, and maybe therein lies potentially why changes were made at half time. That might have just exacerbated what he thought about his performance. Like I said, I think you've got to be very preemptive and predict where it's going to land and be very quick across the ball to get to him. Because maybe if you do get to him, then his need to take a touch gives you the chance to get close to tackle him. If you are, 5 or 6 yards in the end is away from him, Sorba thinks, sod it, I might as well hit this first time.
And that's really, he's the only opportunity for Thomas in that moment is to crack it first time and see what happens. Yeah. And you touched on Panda, and I think we've given the goalkeeper a little bit of stick in recent weeks, and I think fairly so for some of the errors. I just think it's through a crowd of players, and it's past him chances to. I think he saved a curling effort from Thomas before that. He then saved
one of the going into the bottom corner. Yeah. Really good save. Really good save.
I think the manager was frustrated with Ndala and possibly Gelhardt as well. How he didn't get out quickly enough from Ajay, and it's a really good header from Ajay. He heads it, he gets up, he wins it, he heads it up and away. Sometimes you also have to give a bit of credit to the player and just say, look, that he's obviously in great form. He's in a purple patch. How often do you see that? That volley either crack into another player, it go out for a throw in, or go miles over. It's one of them where he's caught it flush and it's gone not in the top corner, but it's past Ivor before he can move. I think he was frustrated with Ndala and Gelhardt in not getting out to engage quicker. The corner after that, they did get out, and they basically Ndala did what he should have done for the goal just before. But as the manager's very, and me and Burnsy were talking about this before that. What you'll get, and he said, because I asked him about why Ryan Giles was taken off, and funny enough, just before we started recording, I read out the quote from Jukurovic as to why he took Giles off. He is brutally honest, and some people would go, "Well, I'm not sure he should be saying that," but actually, he just says it as it is, and he'll say we were, and he said before the game we were prepared. I asked him about Sorba Thomas, given that he's in great form, and that City tried really hard to sign him last January, and they signed Louis Barry instead. And look how that's all worked out. But they were aware of Thomas. I just think in that moment they switched off. And as he always says, goals, pretty much every goal comes from a mistake. This is football, he will say, and that is generally you need a mistake for a goal to happen, don't you? And that was that was a defensive mistake.
Just on the manager, can I ask? Did he tell them they could go home at half time? tell us what went on. I thought that's great. Did he say you may as well go home, lads?
Yeah, I said. I think one of my first questions was to him after the game was what did you say to him at half time? Because obviously they were garbage in the first half and could have been 2 or 3 out. And the game's gone. And then obviously second half, it's like watching a different team. And he's like, well, I said, because I noticed as well, he was out really early after a good 5 minutes before everybody else came back. I saw him walk out the tunnel, because the tunnel, for those that don't know, at Stoke is in the corner where they used to have the away fans behind the goal. They've moved them into the opposite corner. And we're in the main stand above the dugouts. And I noticed Jukurovic and a couple of his coaching staff, Marko Salatovic, they walked out back to the dugout quite early. So I was thinking, well, he must have said something. He must have said his piece and left them to it. And he said, like, I was really calm at half time. I just said to them, if we're going to play like that in the second half, as we did in the first half, we may as well get on the bus and go home.
I like him. I like him.
He's not wrong, though, is he?
No. And maybe what I said, that Shemi said after the game about them having a little chat with each other, I thought that might have been not necessarily tongue-in-cheek, but a bit flippant, but Sergei and his assistants obviously said what he wanted to say. Dean's obviously in there as well. And sometimes as players, we've spoken about the squad that they've put together. It's an experienced squad of players with some smattering of youngsters. So I would like to think that Matt Crooks is saying something, Louis Coyle's saying something, Shemi's saying something, Joe seems relatively feisty. I'm sure he's saying something. There's enough experience in there to go to really absolutely understand and appreciate when you've been crap, and to say, look, and it would be something that the manager would say with a hint of flippancy. But I mean, it won't surprise you, lads, to hear that I've been. It's something that I would have heard in my own career. It's that kind of sense of, and again, it's not to blow smoke up the backsides of the City fans listening to this, but as we spoke before we started recording, chucking it down, dismal Saturday at the end of November, away at Stoke, stood there in the rain, making a lot of noise, and what you're watching on the field is inept. I don't think I wouldn't lay it down as a lack of effort at all. I don't think this squad that they put together's got that in the locker, and I mean that's slightly damning a team with faint praise. Oh, at least you try. No. It seems to be a very motivated team with good characters, the ones that I mentioned, and broadly the whole squad. So, but you do have occasions like that where you've got to fundamentally change the way that you played the first half, and they did that. This is the thing, and please, if you're listening, don't think for 1 second that we're overly going at Hull City for the way that they played in the first half, because, as I said, I'd like to think as an ex-player, maybe if I was speaking to the players there, or maybe catching them in and around the game, if we were on site, there'd be that kind of eyebrow raise where you go, it's pretty crap when it first half, but at least you sorted out in the second. That's the beauty of what football is. You go for a pie and a cup of tea at half time thinking, bloody hell, we've come all this way and it's been rubbish. Things can only get better. Last season, it wouldn't have done. Last season, it'd have gone downhill. This season, it's kind of like, well, yeah, no, we can. And we've got the players to. 2 changes that were made, I thought, changed the game. A collective lifting. Even when John Lundstrom came on, barking orders, pointing his finger, getting stuff sorted. Let's gloss over that miss from about 6 yards out, bless him. But that there was a lot to like about it, and a lot to value about what they did in the second half. And having spoken to Sergei, I said to you, Baz, then I bumped into him in the hotel down near Sky that we stay in a couple of Fridays ago before the QPR game. I had a really good chat with Dean Holden and a good catch up, and he's lovely. I've got a lot of time for him. I met Sergei in person for the first time. And he made the point that when we do talk to him on a Saturday down the camera, he just looked nonplussed. Not that I thought he'd recognise me, just completely nonplussed, because quite obviously all he does is talk to a camera with a microphone, whereas we can see him and he can't see. So he's got no idea who the hell's asking him questions in this whole accent. But it was lovely, really nice, genial company, very focused, quite funny. And then walked back into the corner to sit with four of the biggest blokes I've ever seen in my life. So I left him to it.
No, I think tactically that he's just an astute manager. You know, you could see that.
Oh, it's not luck. It's not just chuck on and see what happens. It's done. It's done with effect, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, he looked at what was going on in the first half, and he said before the game that they've got 2 very good wingers in Manhoff and Sorba Thomas, and they didn't deal with it. So he changed it second half. He changed it at half time. He put Crooks on, and that gave them a bit more solidity in midfield, because they had no control in midfield throughout. They were just being cut through time after time through the middle of the park. Out wide, they were being cut to pieces down the sides. But then sending on Carl Joseph and Mo Balumi, suddenly City had more control. It pushed them 10, 15, 20 yards further up the pitch, and also it stopped their 2 wingers having a complete free run at Giles and Louis Coyle. It was a complete. There were 1 or 2 moments second half. I know, obviously, after Gilo came off and Akin Famewo came on, and they got in, as you touched on there, about the incredible tackle from Louis Coyle. They got cut to pieces. Famewo was cut all at sea, but he's not in fairness, he's not a left back. He's a centre half playing at left back. But tactically, in the first half. They got it wrong. The shape was all over the place in the first half. They rode their luck. They got in at half time with only one down, and he was able to get control in the second half. And when you think of this, what did Panda have to do second half? Almost nothing. Yes, there was a great block from John Egan, that tackle from the skipper, one or two other nearly moments, but Stoke created very little really in the second half, and that was because City were much more organised. They were a bit like the first 60 minutes against Ipswich. They were much more disciplined. They had structure. And obviously on Saturday, they had threat out wide, particularly with Mo Balumi, who's just very, very good on the ball and carved out in the end 2 goals.
Just on the subject of Famewo, Oliver Harsley says another strong reaction by the players after a shocking first half to pick up a statement result and show that we're still potential playoff contenders. After his performance on Saturday, we're really going to miss Ajayi's presence when he goes to AFCON.
AFCON? Is that some kind of like comic convention?
AFCON.
Oh, Con.
They all dress up in football kits and people draw them in cartoons. Yeah, AFCON. So when does he go? How long's he likely to be away for, Bass?
Well, that'll depend on Nigeria's how far they go. Obviously, the final's on the 18th of January.
It was a stupid question. I'll acknowledge that.
Yeah, their first game's the 23rd of December. He was expected to go after the Wrexham game on next Wednesday night, but they're trying to get him to stay for the Millwall game and fly pretty much from Heathrow after the Millwall game. So we'll see. Then obviously it's how long Nigeria stayed. They had a shocker in the World Cup qualifier. Ajayi unfortunately missed the deciding penalty, But yeah, their first game's at Tanzania, the 23rd of December. The finals, they got to the final 2 years ago, didn't they? And were beaten by Mika Seri's Ivory Coast in the Ivory Coast. They'll be one of the favourites, but we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, it's going to be a big loss. They obviously can't. They're not going to do anything transfer-wise in January with it. That he's only going to be away for a month, and they've got obviously Egan's playing really well. They've got Famewo who can drop in. Young McCarthy's there as well, and hopefully the prognosis on Charlie Hughes isn't too bad with his hamstring, but we'll find that out later in the week.
How many games has he played this season, Shemi?
I'll check that. It's not that many because obviously he missed a chunk, and then he was out of the team for a while because he went with Egan and Hughes. So he's come back into it, but he's obviously a big influence for them, isn't he? He really is. That was his 9th appearance of the season. His successive start. So he started against Ipswich. He came in and started against Ipswich, and obviously then he played 90. But he played 90 on the first day, then was out at Coventry, then was out for a chunk. Then he came back and played 90 against Leicester and Charlton, half at Norwich when he came on at half time and made a big difference. 90 away at Derby, 4 against Portsmouth, and then, as I say, back-to-back 90s now in the last 2. So he will play. He will play against Middlesbrough. He will play against Wrexham, and he will play against Millwall if he's available. If Nigeria let him play the Millwall game, and it'll be who plays with him. If Hughes is injured, it'll be Egan and Famewo as the backup. But Famewo was brought in as a squad player anyway, so he was never. I don't think he was brought in to be the first choice centre half. And I think they'll just try and muddle through. If they need, Lundstrom can also drop back if he needed to, I think, and play centre back if there was a crisis of injuries or anything like that, or suspension.
I wonder if there's a shout. Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, I suppose the makeup of what they can do as well. That's part of obviously the thought process. I think not necessarily cobbling it together, but what's the prognosis with Charlie? What's his?
Well, yeah, so he's got a hamstring strain. He was actually named on the bench on Saturday, but didn't.
Right, okay.
He wasn't on the bench. He didn't warm up. He was there. He was part of the group that were at Stoke, but he's going for a scan to see what if anything, is there any damage. I mean, the manager seemed fairly hopeful that he would be available for Friday night, but again, they won't want to take any risks, and they probably don't need to take any risks, knowing that they've got the next 3 games. The next 2 games at least, they've got Shemi. It is a recurrence of the hamstring injury that he had early last season that kept him out for 2 or 3 months. So they'll want to be careful. And I know fans will be going, yeah, but when Hull City said to be careful, they say he's out for a week and then he's out for 6 weeks. So, but you know as well as anybody, Prutts, that with injuries, it's hard. So, yes, you can have an injury and you think he's going to be back in a week or 2 weeks, and then that comes and there's a setback. Like McBurney is a prime example. McBurney ticked all the boxes to be back for the Norwich game, and then he had a setback in training with his calf, and they were like, "We can't take any more. It needs a bit more time." They're not. It's not fixed. It's not.
It's not. But I understand. I understand. There's that huge appetite for information and knowledge, and you know what I mean. If a club's quiet for more than a few hours on a daily basis, then we presume that something's wrong. I get it. I was speaking to Todd Cantwell the other week at this event in Manchester, and kind of saying along the same lines, and he had a sense of frustration because my first just a general chit chat where you go into that default thing of what you're saying. Oh, how long do you reckon? And bless him, he gives an answer, but then backtracks by vaguely going around it, and you kind of still going, well, I should know better than that because it'd be nice to be ready for then. But if anything happens in that pushes your start date back a week, 2 weeks, because if you go hell for leather and go, I'm fine, something a little more serious happens, and then suddenly you're missing 2 months, 3 months the rest of the season, then it doesn't do anyone any good, does it?
No, absolutely. Burnsy?
Well, just on the subject of centre halves, I mean, regardless of Hughes' fitness for Friday, I'd stick with Egan and Ajayi because I think they've earned the right to keep the shirts in
Very
terms
much
of
so.
the performances on Saturday. And just to throw another name in, because we've got a question on it, and it's sort of relevant to the centre half discussion, because I'm sure I saw him come on as a sub earlier in the season and play centre half, which I wasn't really aware of, having not watched a lot of him, but obviously been aware of him. Tiger Delic says, any idea what's happening with Brandon Williams? He's got on the bench a few times, but has disappeared again recently. Another injury, question mark? Because he played centre half, came on as centre half earlier in the season. I thought, I'll note that for future reference if they're short of a centre half. Where's he at?
Yeah, he's another one, isn't he, that they've got there. I think from what I gather from speaking to everybody, it's a case of they're being careful with him. Obviously, he's not played for 2 years. We know that. They've had a fitness plan in place with him and the medical people to get him back up to speed. And I think when the occasions we've seen him, and even in the under-21s, he's looked a bit short, if I'm honest. So if you're looking a bit short in the under-21s, that's a big concern to then step up and play Hal for leather in the Championship. So they're trying to be careful with him. He's part of full training. And they're trying to build up his minutes and his fitness and his stamina and his durability in the under-21s with a view to. I know there'll be people saying, "Well, it's just a waste of a contract. He's not playing. What's the point? We may as well get rid of him in January and free up some squad space." But I think they still see value in him. But obviously, there's also the other side of it is where would he have fitted in? Well, he wouldn't play on the left because Giles has been brilliant. On the right, Coyle's been fantastic. And Cody Drame's been dropping in as well. And so there's not really been it's not like you've got the Brandon Williams of when he broke through at Manchester United chomping at the bit and you're going, bloody hell, how is he not getting in the team? I just don't think he's at the level yet where you're going, actually, I'm going to drop Louis Coyle or I'm going to drop Ryan Giles. I just don't think he's at that level yet. And hopefully over the festive period, he will be at the level because they're going to need all hands on deck over the next month when you've got a lot of games in a short period of time. The pitches are starting to get heavy. The weather's not very good, and you've got certainly an FA Cup third round tie. That might be a game they're penciling in, second weekend in January when they've got an FA Cup tie, depending on who it's against, obviously, and where it is. That might, if it's a non-league team at home. With respect, maybe that's a game where you can put Brandon Williams on and say, right, we're going to give him a start, we're going to give him 60 minutes and get him a competitive game, get him a competitive start. But I think they're obviously, and again, I know people get frustrated with this, but they've also got a player's welfare and a player's career to think of, and they can't just chuck him in and think, well, he's going to play 20 minutes and he's not. We're setting him up to fail, and the team.
Okay. we'll keep an eye on it. Tiger Delic, thank you very much for the question. Sir Trev just wanted to say battling performance, gave the ball away far too easily on the middle of the pitch, but they found a way to win. Well done, City. Joseph Gilson to the 1904 club. Manager again showing his in-game ability to change things. Hopefully it continues as the players return from injury. We've got a few messages on that. Chris Dyer says, whose tackle was better, Coyle versus Stoke on Saturday or Harry Maguire versus QPR away in 2016? Great to see there's still a place for a crunching defensive tackle in the modern game. It is actually, though these days I'm never sure what's a fair tackle and what's not a fair tackle. It's you'd see someone, you think, well, that's a fair tackle, and then the referee gives a foul and everything like that. Though I do detect the referees, are they under instruction to let the game flow a bit more this season?
Yeah, I'd say so. I just thought Lewis was perfectly timed. It's that sweet spot where, and there was no reaction from what I remember to it from a Stoke point of view. There's nobody waving their arms for anything. It was as the fella's about to pull the trigger, Lewis there in the nick of time. It's brilliant. So there is an element of that, and in the Championship broadly, I'd say that we're more open to that than we are the Premier League. And I do think they're there to make sure that the game is flowing. But it was from that point of view, it was good physical contest, I thought.
Yeah, full-blooded tackle that he had to make. Perfectly timed, wins the ball, takes the player. It's what you want to see. And I actually thought, Crooks's little nibble to win the ball for the winning goal was absolutely crucial, because if he doesn't nick that ball, that goal doesn't happen.
Yeah, and as well, it's because Mark was talking about it afterwards about playing themselves into trouble, and he's right. But the fact that City were quick to go and press and make sure that they could nick the ball back. I don't know how many times Chamada would try that again as a fullback, as a covering tackle, to completely miss the ball as it ends up at the feet of Joe, because Joe must have seen the ball come towards him thinking, oh, well, it'd be great if he gets here, but it's probably not going to. And the slide was that perfectly timed that it doesn't even touch the legs of the recovering player, it just goes straight through. And then what Joe's done so many times this season, has the composure, has the ability, has the technique to be able to do it. Once again, talking in super favourable terms about what it is to be a Hull City player. And as a very dear woman to me, I used to work at Hull City for a very long time, Kathy Rowe pointed out that he's one of not it's not a long line and a busy line of players, but of players that have come to a City at a certain point in their careers and has really enjoyed themselves. Whether that gives in the bench, the foundation, the benchmark to move in different directions, however he sees fit. But the way that City are playing, what is afforded from the point of view of being able to go and create and express himself, fits him perfectly at this moment in time. And he said that he's not looking to go anywhere, and it would be silly to be thinking about going anywhere right now, because he's getting consistent games, consistent goals, consistent assists, and being the player that we've known has been in there for such a long time.
Burnsy, from a fan's point of view, when you've got somebody like Joff, who obviously came in January last year, was hugely influential in the team staying up, but it was a real struggle, and there was a lot of downers last season, as we all know. When you get a player that's at a Premier League team and that could have gone to other teams potentially in the summer that are more fancied, more attractive, with everything that was going on at Hull City, when you see a player like Joff come out and go, I thought I wanted to leave Leeds United, I wanted to come to Hull City, I want to be here, I don't want to go anywhere else. There's that saying about you should never fall in love with a lone player. Fans of all clubs say it. But that must, for a Hull City fan, that must be an incredible feeling to know that there's a player of that quality out there that wants to come to your football club, to play for your football club, wear your shirt, and have the impact. 7 goals, 3 assists in the last 9 games. All the questions were asked when McBurney got injured at Birmingham. Well, what's going to happen? Is that the end of it? Are they going to fall away now? Who's going to score the goals? Well, he stepped up and scored. McBurney's missed 8 games. And Joff scored in pretty much all of the games that McBurney's not played. It must be wonderful for a fan to have a player of that level so desperate to play for your club and talk about it in such glowing terms.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of he's fallen in love with the club. Have you asked him why? What it is? Is it because he really enjoyed it with the lads last season, despite the fact it was a bit of a struggle? He felt he found himself because let's face it, it's a different manager, isn't it,
Mm.
Yeah.
than last season. What is it that he so loves about the club? Has anybody asked him? He must have asked him.
Yeah,
He
yeah, yeah,
must
yeah.
have said. Is it
Yeah,
the whole package? Is it Carl Joseph being there, Charlie Hughes being there? Is it because it was an uncertain summer. I know he came relatively late, but what was it that made him think? No, I absolutely want to. It'll be good for me. I'll feel good in myself. I'll be able to perform there.
probably Prutts
It's
is better placed to
fascinating.
answer this, but sometimes players just find a home where they feel settled. Off the pitch is the most important thing. They feel settled,
Mm.
away from it, their home life away from it. When they come into work, they've got, the environment that's been created, the people around them. That all, obviously he's got his mates. He's got Charlie. He's got Kyle. So he knows them. Obviously, as you say, Burnsy, there's been a change in manager. Ruben from last year now to Sergei, but I think Sergei is improved his game. I think he's taken him onto a different level. You look at his goals: left foot, right foot, shots from, powerful shots, little clips, deft touches, all sorts of goals running in. You think of the goal against Leicester when Miller frees Gilo and he crosses back post, running into the back post. He's scoring, apart from headers, he's scoring all kinds of goals. So I think it is the overall package. He just feels that this is where he can flourish. Maybe he's not got the glare of, let's be honest, Leeds are a juggernaut. The attention, the media scrutiny, the fan base, that is a bear pit all the time. And the expectation of Leeds to not only win the Championship but be in the Premier League and challenging at the top end of the Premier League. Maybe that is and that's not meant with any disrespect to Hull City, but Hull City's obviously ambitions are to achieve all that, of course. But the scrutiny and the focus and the intensity is different at Hull City compared to what it is at Leeds. And so I think sometimes a player just fits, and we see it all over the place. Sometimes players just find a home and where they feel comfortable. They're given the freedom to go and express themselves, and they just click. Prutts?
Yeah, no, I'd agree with all that. I think the ability to be able to get the minutes in that his ability deserves, I think, has got to be high on the list of priorities.
Yeah, he's playing.
Geography will come into it. With regard, I mean, I've got absolutely no idea where Joe lives, but if it's anywhere between Leeds and Hull, if it's more Leeds way, given where his parent club is, given where he's originally from geographically, means that there's an element of being able to go to work, in inverted commas, and leave work there. Do you know what I mean? And we think about it differently for footballers because we see how kind of transient it can be where you're moving from club to club to club. But once you get settled somewhere, when I was at Sheffield Wednesday, and obviously this is very, very different because Joe's a far better player and able to captivate people more than I ever was. But so living where we live, it's about an hour and a quarter to get to the training ground, and then obviously around the corner you've got Hillsborough, which meant that work again, and I mean this by definition of these people getting paid to go and do the job, not in the sense of them going down a mine or working 15-hour shifts on a hospital work. But you go to work, you do your training, you get everything done there, and you come home, and you've got quite a clear delineation between footballer and what the rest of your life is. Yes, you live right, you look after yourself correctly, but you come home and it's either the kids or family and all that type of stuff. And you can get your football-y stuff done there. Maybe there's an element of that. And I'm not saying for 1 second that Joe gets mithered in the street, left, right, and centre if he went into Hull City Centre or anything like that at all. But it is nice sometimes from a headspace point of view of knowing that if it is a Saturday, you get in your car to drive down the motorway to go to work, and you've got plenty of time to think about it, plenty of time to get yourself ready, and then go into game mode. So maybe he's found a nice, clear separation between those two things. He obviously gets on with his teammates. chucking Ollie McBurney there as well, who I know is great for a dressing room. And like I said, I've spoken to the manager a couple of times on interviews, met him for the first time in person the other week, and just thought what a thoroughly lovely fella, good company, but not lovely in the sense of, oh, he's nice, in the sense of good company, but he's got a gear change in him. And Dean even alluded to that. He's obviously very busy with his coaching remit in the staff, but it's a very harmonious group. And long may it continue, because it is getting something out of players such as Joe, and it's mutually beneficial, as you say, about falling in love with a lone player. He might have a cracking season this season at the top end of the Championship, and someone in the bottom half of the Premier League goes, you know what, let's have a punt on him, or a side that comes down from the Premier League and wants to go back up thinks, this is all very hypothetical because City might find themselves there, we never know, but they might think that a Joe Gelhardt that's got a bank of 40 odd games behind him with, I don't know, maybe 15 goals, 8, 7, 8, 9, 10 assists, suddenly you're going, someone else is going to give him a chance. And to round it off on a cynical note, Leeds are sat there looking at an asset whose value is going back up and thinking, well, yeah, let's keep him there because he's enjoying himself and it's mutually beneficial for us too.
Absolutely. Burnsy?
I was going to read some of the messages coming in. You can always get in touch at the 1904 Club. We pick them up on Twitter. The fat bald sausage makes me laugh every time. Says changes made the difference, which is definitely one of Sergei's strong points within games. Lunny and Balumi brought some much needed calm. That tackle by Coyle is one of those tackles you remember. Lee Walker says first half we were poor, second half Sergei made changes, massive improvement. Denbo says, just amazing how Sergei can right things which are wrong. This team's success, if any come, flows direct from the gaffer's office. I would suggest it's been a successful season already because I think it's exceeded most people's expectations already. Dane says, at halftime, I didn't think we had a chance of even getting a point, but once again, the gaffer shows he knows how to make the correct changes at the right time. Massive win against a top team, and Joffy and Shemi were awesome. And Richard Egland said, loved the day Saturday. Sergei is making a better impression every game. Thought Akin looked good when he came on. This is a proper team that we can all get behind. Lots of good performances. Coyle, Shemi, Egan, Joseph, second half. Joffy, Balumi, great pass in for the winner. And Paul Hood says a huge and positive change this season in that we look like we can come back from a goal down. Too many occasions last season, Cardiff, Luton and Watford, for example, when we went one down and it was game over. We'll come to Maury in messages. We've mentioned McBurney a couple of times, Baz. Is he back for Friday? Is he a chance of the bench? What's the latest?
I think there's a chance, yeah. So he's the hope was that they'll both him and Liam Miller will be back in training, and there's a chance they could be involved on Friday. But if not Friday, the manager said definitely for Wrexham. So that's positive, really positive that both McBurney and Liam Miller are back. Just wanted to say, just finally on the game itself, as poor as City were in the first half, and they were awful defensively as a collective, again really poor. The game changes if after 10 minutes they get the penalty that was Gelhardt did brilliantly to win the ball. Plays through by Crooks. Crooks referees got himself in a really bad position. He's got players in front of him, but immediately makes the ball gesture to say that the defender got the ball. He didn't get the ball. He's got a linesman on that side that should see it. If City get that penalty, yes, it's not a guaranteed goal, but let's be honest, likelihood is they go 1-0 up after 10 minutes. Suddenly, Stoke crowd, we know what they're like, how quickly they turn. City are 1-0 up away from home, potentially a very different game entirely. So, on those, that could have changed the course of the entire game. It didn't happen, and you have to get on with it. But it was a really poor decision.
It's a huge part, and one that I had completely forgotten. But it's we chatted about it at half time. Yeah, what a championship game can swing on. Absolutely right, Baz. And knowing a little of the process that comes with working on referees' decisions and looking at decisions, that decision will be categorically put forward that it was completely wrong, and so there'll be a chat about that with whoever was involved, from what I can gather. But that was, that is, it's a very, I say very straightforward. You watch it and it just gets worse and worse and worse the more you see it, because you can't play a man and then a couple of seconds later then take the ball off him. That's just not. But and again, it goes back to what we said about wonderful ball through from Joe, and that could have been City 1-up against the second place side, and suddenly the Bet365 turns a little bit, and City enjoying themselves a little more in the first half than they actually did.
Speaking of the Bet365 turning, and let's cover the rather thorny subject of handbags, man bags, flapping, whatever you want, whatever phrase you want to call it at the end. When I did have to laugh at John Lundstrom's Instagram post on Sunday saying, thanks for all the Stoke fans. Shame you couldn't take it back when I made my point at full time. So obviously, quick recap, ugly scenes at the end. A mental fan tries to come on the pitch, slips over, which is quite comical actually. So he'll be now, kicked out, I would think. Then, but both sets of players have a bit of a skirmish. It sort of dies down a bit. It then goes again. Mark Robbins alleges that one of the City coaching staff said something to reignite it. We don't know what happened. And eventually it all dies down. City go back up to the other end and celebrate with what were 1,400 or so jubilant Tigers bouncing up and down. Always dangerous when you start singing, when the opposition starts singing Mauled to Hull City away from home. But anyway, so that was it. Not great. Mark Robbins was obviously furious, blaming Hull City, saying that Stoke will get a fine because of it. Jurkovic, a bit more philosophical, going, it's football, it happens, it's people's emotions. They've just lost, late goal at the opposite end. Fans get involved. It's a bit of nothing. We all move on. Prutts, Joby McAnuff in the studio on Sky on Saturday with you said that sort of thing can galvanise teams. We saw at Birmingham when Birmingham came after City and they went and scored and won the game. Obviously this was after the game, but those sort of moments he was suggesting that for a season help bring everybody together as well. And when you've got experience like Lundstrom, Crooks, obviously McBurney wasn't on there, Egan, Ajay, Coyle, Slater, fans want to see that something housery, don't they? And they feel their team have got it.
Yeah, I totally get what Joby's saying. I still think it looks absolutely horrendous. And whether that's me being a bit softer further down the line about being away from a football pitch, because as a player, I would have been there front and centre, not causing trouble, but backing up my teammates and getting people out of trouble, hopefully. I just think it looks terrible. And I don't know, you could have a slightly different take on it as you mature, as you inherently in theory you mature, can you? I saw the whistle go. I saw John sprint towards that end, and it was quite clearly. And again, with my ex-player's hat on, you can have someone sat there for an hour and a half giving you dog's abuse, and the minute you might tell them to politely do one, there's a reaction which can get you into trouble. Now, as I've gotten older and seen football from a slightly more detached perspective, having watched my son play football and the aggravation that sometimes comes with people on the touchline giving their 10 pence worth when it's not remotely necessarily or wanted, stuff like that at the end, I'm not a fan of. I'm not a fan of, and like I said, it's not about being twee and goody two shoes or working with the EFL or trying to help match officials. It happens, and we were watching it, and it kept happening, and it kept happening, and it kept happening. Stoke starts singing about the referee. What on earth can a referee and two lines people do about that? You've got 40 odd people involved. You've got managers from both sides. You've got staff from both sides. You've got a goalkeeper that's come down from the other end of the pitch. I get it. We're all in it together, and all that. I do get that. I just think, as a spectacle, and again, without sounding too twee, stood there with your kids watching the game. It's an absolute shambles. It's a shambles, and both teams will get charged for failing to keep the players in check. That's right, because it looks like a brawl in a pub car park. Am I being too soft there, Burns? I don't know. Am I? I don't get it. There was that anger and passion that you saw. Didn't see that at all in the stadium for 95 minutes, did you? You didn't see fans going at each other. Stops at the end and it all flares up off the back of a game that didn't have that much spice to it. It was well fought, but it just seemed that it didn't befit what we'd seen for the previous 90 odd minutes.
I'm gonna try and match your maturity, Prutts, because you are right in fairness. But I am the man on this podcast who said of the Birmingham brawl, I loved it. It was proper old school football and entertainment. So I don't want to appear entirely hypocritical. But if that fella who's coming down the steps that Lundstram has provoked at that end, if he doesn't slip and is a bit more athletic and he gets on the pitch, then he's running for Lundstram and everything like that. So you've got to be careful.
Yeah.
And as somebody asks, and it's a relevant question, seeing we're discussing it, and you do have to be careful with it. You can't. I think to some extent it's the nature of the team and that housery. They're not going to stand for any nonsense from anybody, really, and that. That's a redeeming quality in the side because they've got that about them. We're going to stand up for ourselves and we're not going to take any nonsense from anybody. And that's added to their performances this season. But it is dangerous and you've got to be careful. But, the stewards have got to control the crowd and everything like that, etc., etc. Phil Beaumont, 1971, asks, what happened with the EFL over the Birmingham brawl? We've heard nothing since. And it's a week since City submitted evidence. Looks like another EFL investigation after Stoke. Is there any verdict on Birmingham yet, Baz?
No, those things take quite a while. There was a fine came out or something a week, or maybe within the last couple of weeks for a game that was a year ago. So I think they'll get charged very quickly. They would have had to have probably submitted their findings by 5 o'clock today, or certainly this week, as it was after the Birmingham game, and that was an early kickoff, I think, as well. So, they'll get charged. Both teams will get fined. But
it's a really good point, Burns, that you make about the fan potentially getting on the pitch, because I think we all buy into the fact that because it's staff, because it's players, because it's kind of two sets of people from two different clubs that have gone at each other on the pitch in a physical sense, that I think we can stomach that a little bit more, can't we? If that's boxed off in the middle of the pitch and you've got fans baying for blood but not getting onto the pitch, I think it might sound a bit against what I've just said, but we're broadly more accepting of that. The minute a fan gets on the pitch, and in that instance, and there's a whole debate about whether pitch invasions, both celebratory and from a protest point of view, what they mean, what they should mean, how and when they should happen, if any time at all. That fan has got absolutely no right to get on that pitch. Exactly. No right to get on that pitch, to the point of view that it's against the law to get on the pitch. You know what I mean? So as much as John Lundstram, and again, I've watched John play for a long, long time. He's a big physical specimen. He's a very active player, very physical player, very passionate player. I get all that. And I distinctly remember as we were watching it, the whistle went and he went that way to that end to make a point. Now, as I said, if you've spent however many minutes you've been on the pitch getting dog's abuse about whether it's you personally, whether it's your team, part of what tribalistic football is celebrating with your team, but it's a big up yours to the opposition, isn't it? We all get that completely. Now, the fans, we've seen it. You see it on slow-mos. You see it when you're in the terraces, coming to the front and giving it loads. The poor stewards that are stood there, that are paid there to keep these fans at bay, and they're not paid enough to care enough to keep fans at bay and off the pitch. Because if the front portion of that Stoke City stadium wanted to get on the pitch, stewards would have no chance whatsoever. They'd just go straight over the top of them. They'd be on the pitch. So this fella's made a beeline to get on the pitch. He's stacked it, not managed to get there. It then becomes a bit of a standoff with people pointing fingers. You hear everyone getting involved, players getting involved. But I've seen it when they got on the pitch. The fellow that got on at St Andrews to punch Jack Grealish Millwall getting promoted at Wembley and making a beeline to go past their own players to go and give the opposition a load of whatever because they've beaten them. I've seen it. I've seen it so many times firsthand at these games. The fans have absolutely no right to be on the pitch at all. And that's the fans make the game what it is. We saw that in COVID, how crap it was without anyone in the stadiums. I get all that. And that's what makes it the spectacle. That's what makes these players live very, very lovely, cushy lives. I totally get all that. That fella had no right to try and get anywhere near it. It then causes and sparks that, because I don't know whether you get a Stoke City players defending their own fans and going, you shouldn't be doing that, John Lundstrom, let's all chuck in together. But it just that sense of that galvanizing effect, I get it. I totally get it. And 20 years ago, I'd have been right on board with that. But it's just looks horrendous. Just looks horrendous. And it can be when you are looking at that type of thing. If you are stood there with your kids or younger people, it can be quite frightening for them as well. And again, it's not it's not protecting people. It's not saying that kids shouldn't experience discomfort and be able to react to certain situations at all. But it blew up, and then it kept going, didn't it? What was it? 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes? Kept going and going and going. And to be brutally honest, if you want to push it further down the line, no one's going to start throwing punches.
That's what John Egan said to me.
But it's all this professional, come on then. If they just went, hang on, okay then, these two want to have a fight, leave them to it, they'd go, well, hang on, I'm not going to have a fight. I'm going to do all this, like you and all that. But the minute it's like when you see it when they're pulling each other back. If a referee went over and blew the whistle and went, right, you've got 30 seconds, go to town on each other.
Like they do in the ice hockey.
Yeah, exactly. And the minute one hits the deck, we stop. You go, well, that's obviously not going to work, is it? And it's not going to happen. So there's a lot of pushing and shoving. There's a lot of pulling. There's a lot of finger pointing, all that type of stuff. Like I said, it's just a lot of fellas pushing and shoving each other for really all they're going to get is a fine, isn't it? And nothing positive comes out of it at all.
No. Burnsy, final point on that, because I know we're running out of time and we haven't covered the game on Friday yet, and we need to quickly talk about that.
I was just going to say, all that being said, but whoever took the pick, was it one of your snappers, Baz, of the sort of when they're having a scrum or a rolling maul or whatever, of Louis Coyle in it and his face? It's an absolutely magic picture. Whoever took that picture.
Give me a minute and I'll tell you who it was. Give me a minute and I'll tell you who it was, because Louis Coyle's face is like, well, I'm in the middle of this and I don't know whether he's spotted the camera or whatever. It's just, it's a magical picture. It is a great picture.
It's just credit to whoever took it. Right then, Middlesbrough. What are you going to tell us?
Just quickly,
they've come from behind on Saturday, haven't they? Yeah. Just quickly.
Yeah, Mark Curtin was the photographer who took that wonderful picture of the skirmish, and Louis Coyle as well. So Borough on Friday night, then the first of 2 home games at the MKM Stadium. Wrexham up next Wednesday, both 8 o'clock, both on Sky Sports. Borough obviously going really well, came from behind to beat that lot on Saturday. I think only 2 wins in 6 though. I don't think they're in great form. Obviously a manager change. Kim Hallberg's first game in charge. Prutts, that's another one for City. They've had Ipswich, Stoke, now Borough. 3 of the teams chasing promotion. Obviously Ipswich probably will get promotion at some point. But
that's another good test. Another good test because... Yeah, huge. And then you look at what they were able to do. I think we're forgetting, not necessarily the magnitude, that's possibly too big a word, but City going to the home of the second place team in the Championship and coming away with all 3 points. We've talked about the first half. We talked about how great they were in the second half. But as an achievement and what they want, from what they want to do this season, it's amazing. It's amazing to go and do that, because Stoke have been very strong so far this season. Coventry, we see, is slightly ahead of everyone else at this moment in time. Borough, you can lay the same challenge down. Really, they've got an ability to beat teams. They've got a new boss who's just will be working his way out with what he wants from his side and who's there. But I think given what we've seen from City, just hopefully, again, as we've discussed, that little warning shot across the bows to themselves about not being complacent, because on another day, Stoke would have been out of sight, 3 defeats on the spin, and suddenly everyone's going, well, Hull City started well, but they've tailed off and they missed certain players. But I think it's a great test, a really good test, and one that City have got to go into with slightly less expectations on them to win from the outside, but knowing and seeing what they've done to teams across the division so far this season, Borough have got to be so very wary of them.
Burnsy, just before I come to you, Prutts, how impressed quickly have you been with, because again, the fact that Balloumi's been out injured, he's coming back, he's not yet started. They've obviously lost Matt Crooks for a little bit. McBurney's been out for 8 games. Lundstrom was out for 9 games. Miller was out, came back, and has been out again for the last 6 weeks or so. How impressed have you been with the way that City have kept churning out results when they've not been at full strength? And how kind of exciting potentially is that for Christmas and beyond, that if they've got a full strength squad, what they can achieve going forward? Yeah,
very much so. And I'll tell you what else has been good as well, because I mentioned the word harmony within the team. So you have 2 players that were dragged at half-time in Ndala and JB. We had a similar situation against Preston where players were dragged at half-time, and you got exactly the correct reaction. Next game, changes were made earlier on. Those players came back on and made an impact. The challenge now to those that came off is get yourselves back in the side. You'll be kept on your toes by the lads that have come in and done what they've done, but your kind of questions to answer in training and when you get game time once again are there. And so there's a hungry squad. There's a squad that when it's fully fit, I said this earlier on in the season, that the characteristics and the composition of it was one that people should be thinking about. Not necessarily about dark horses to go and storm the top 2, but to be absolutely competitive, way more competitive than what we saw last season. Isn't it? Miles off it for all of last season, and a squad that didn't have any real spine to it in all senses of the word. And again, not going against what I've said about mass confrontations and brawls at the end of games. The City squad of last season was way too meek and mild to get involved in any of that. Whereas this season, it's game on both on and off the pitch, in and around the game as and when it's being played. So I think you've got to be excited about who City have got at their disposal. And once again, knitting it all back together about what's been the theme of what we've spoken about and what people have got in touch with. Once again, thank you very much for that, is the ability of the manager. I've got a feeling, without getting too carried away, and hopefully it's not coming away from City for a while, but there'll be teams looking at what he's doing, how he's doing it, the way that he's handling himself, the way that he's dealing with the media, the way that he's dealing with some issues that we've spoken about, given what we said at the end of the Birmingham City game, and his real balance to what his approach to his job is, allied to the staff that he's got. Sergei's doing a cracking job, a very, very good job. And right now, City are in really good hands.
Burnsy?
Yeah, I'm not sure I can add to that. I think he's spot on. I'm very, very impressed, as I've said on previous editions, with what the manager's doing. I had a look at the Middlesbrough highlights. They're all right, but they left it late against Derby. You know, like every game in this division, City are more than capable of beating them, but they'll have to be at their top level. So, but you know, it's going well. They bounced back well after that Ipswich defeat, and that's credit to them for that. So, looking forward to it. I enjoyed your company as always. I feel mature having worked with Prutts today.
Few people say that.
Yeah, I bet I sound like a right miserable sod, don't I? And we all know full well 20 years ago. Well, 20 years ago, I'd have been there. I'd have been there, not getting punched or throwing a punch myself. Hold me back! No one's holding me back. Please, someone hold me back. He's going to get it in a minute.
Yeah, it was funny afterwards when I spoke to Egan, and Egan was like, "Yeah, but no one's ever going to throw a punch, are they? It's just silly." And I was like, "Yeah, you make a fair point. There's always lots of flapping like demented seals, and nothing really happens, and they have to pay out their own pocket." But anyway, that's it. That's it for this extended edition of the 1904 Club. Largely because Prutts got his being a bonnet about the flapping of demented seals at the end of the game against Stoke City.
About violence. Let's all be friends.
Football friends. Anyway, right. That's it from this episode. Obviously, City play at home against the Borough on Friday night. The return of Alfie Jones. Hopefully McBurney and Miller are back. Well, fingers crossed for them. We'll have plenty more in the build-up to that game. Of course, we'll be with Sergei and probably Shemi Ajay before that game. So we'll see how it all plays out. What an away win that was. Back to winning ways. Burnsy, thank you.
My pleasure.
And Prutton. Always a
Pleasure. Both chaps. Loved it.
Right, we'll see you again soon. Up those Tigers.